It's being
Hello,
recorded.
everyone. Yes, you can see where this one's going to go immediately. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Guildmaster Gaming. This time around, we've got another film director, writer-director, I guess I should be saying, Craig Ouellette, and his movie Straight On Till Morning, which is one of the features that we got a chance to see at Film Quest this year. So, Craig, please introduce us to you and your film.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dan. My name is Craig Ouellette. I'm a director, producer, one of the producers, co-writer and editor, along with other things that I'm not credited for, on Straight On Till Morning, which is a romantic horror movie with lesbian leads about the beautiful and terrible things people do for love.
For love. We're going to get into that because we were talking a little bit beforehand. I think that has it's a really strong part. But you kind of remind me one thing. One of the great things about independent film is all the roles you get to play in the production of the film.
Hey, good times. Good times all
So,
around.
so there's a few things I want to get into about this film because I think it has quite a unique history. A few years back, we actually got a chance to see, in a sense, a preview of what the film was going to be. Um, How long did it take you? We'll start with that. How long did it take you to get straight on till morning from when you concept of the story all the way to completing it and getting it screened?
Well, how much time do you have? No. Uh, Straight On Till Morning started as an idea that the co-writer Neil McLaughlin had about a romantic horror movie that was one half True Romance and one half Hostel. So I met him in March. He found the email. It was like March 12th or something like that of 2009. So it's been 15 and a half years to get this thing completed. We raised some money through Kickstarter in like 2010, and we're going to do it one way. Um, and that didn't happen. And then different people had options on it for a few years and whatnot. And then when that kind of wrapped itself up in end of 2016, I said, okay, can we cuss on this?
Yeah.
Okay. I said, fuck
Yeah.
it. I'll just do it myself. And and then that started what ended up being about 8 years of actually working on it. And I by no means did it myself. There were so many people who worked so hard on this movie, in all sorts of different capacities over the years. So even when you say you're going to do it yourself, you're not doing it yourself. And then we tried to shoot it in 2018, and the plan was because I finally found the house. The house was the big mystery, and it's like, sure, I could have just rewritten the script and changed some of these elements that required this a specific house, but I did not. But thanks to my aunt in St. Louis area, we were able to find a house. And so once we found the house, it's like, all right, here we go. And I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to shoot everything that takes place in the house and then use that to raise the money for the opening act of the movie. And then due to life circumstances for the people that own the house, that didn't work out in 2018. So then I was like, I'm going to shoot the whole first act of the movie in California and use that to raise the rest of the money. And then for reasons that we won't even get into, we didn't shoot the whole first act. We only shot for 5 days. Three of which is the opening sequence of the movie, which we shot up in Lone Pine, California, which is gorgeous and amazing, and used in literally hundreds, if not thousands, of things. You've seen it in car commercials. You've seen it at the beginning of Iron Man. I literally just rewatched the Gladiator extended cut 2 nights ago, and like when he's racing home to get to his family, he's racing through Lone Pine, California, which is, I guess, supposed to be the Alps. I'm not sure where that's supposed to be. So, you see it everywhere. So we shot that in a couple of other days with the lead actress Kelsey Christian, and then had to put that on pause and whatnot. I'm like, okay, let's edit that into something and try and raise the money utilizing that. So we shopped that around at AFM in 2019, and had some people asking me, more people than you would think, asking me, so a lesbian horror movie, do people want to see that? And I was like, yes, of course people want to see that. Like, of course they do. Like you got two final girls, you have all sorts of themes that are interesting. It's a queer story. This is fantastic. But in 2019, oddly enough, it wasn't even as welcomed as it is today, which I hope is a good sign for where we're going. Although we won't get into the time of year that this is being recorded, and what just happened in politics. But the So anyway, long long story as I told you, short. Um, then there was a pandemic, and so that put things on pause. And about 20, in spring of 2021, I was like, this is stupid. I spent so much money, effort, and time to shoot stuff. Like, let's try and turn it into something that we can use to raise some money. So, with a little bit of altering and a couple of shots shot in my living room during the pandemic, we turned the opening sequence into a standalone short film that actually the result of the standalone short film is it is its own animal. Like the fate of the characters in the short film is different than it is in the feature film. Um, but we did that and started sending that around to festivals. And I had a movie called Strip that was showing at festivals, a short film that some people may have seen. And then this movie called Anniversary. And so when Anniversary played at FilmQuest in 2021, Movie Maker Production Services was there, and it was the first year they were there, and you could pitch like your feature, and they would help expand your budget and things like that. And I went in like I was ready. So like I was raising money on the car ride up to Utah, and I thought I had to have money in the bank was my understanding. So literally people are transferring chunks of money into my bank account so that we would be ready for the thing. And thanks to that, and thanks to connecting with Movie Maker Production Services and a lot of talented, creative people that I met at FilmQuest and other festivals, as well as at various, LA people that I already knew, like Bonnie Jean Tyre, who's one of the lead actors and producers. Thanks to that, we were able to like power into shooting the main chunk of the movie in 2022, in April 2022, and then we did shoot up planned pickups in early 2023. Like it's like I was editing it myself, and I'm like, well, we decided to shoot a couple of scenes and then some other pickups and whatnot. So there's a couple times in this movie where there is a cut for a 4.5 year cut on somebody in the movie, and I'm going to let it be vague, and you'll never spot it. Nobody's ever spotted it, but it's it's there. So movies take time, and then we literally shot the last stuff for the movie. I shot in this is 2024. I shot in February, I think, of 2024, maybe even March. Actually, the last thing I shot was in May. I think I shot one shot in May because we realized I need the shot. So, and that's the nice thing of when you're working with friends, but also when you own your own gear and stuff like that. It's like I don't have to rent gear. I mean, we did for the main shoot, but for pickups and stuff, it's just my cameras and my lights and all that stuff. Anyway, that was a long-winded
No,
answer to your question.
it does explain just how involved this movie was, but I think it pays off because we were talking a little bit before about the multiple storylines and story arcs for the characters, and it plays off really well there. But I want to let people know that if you have seen the show Anniversary, when it was on the festival circuit a few years back, just like Craig is saying here, it's not going to give away anything about Straight On Till Morning. It was, I think it is a wonderful way that you took the prelude to the movie and created its own independent story and took it a whole different route. It was, wonderfully done.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun to figure out that challenge. I was asking friends, I'm like, okay, with minimal amount of shooting, how can this become a thing? And I had some ideas about it, and I was doing it in kind of a clunky way. And then my friend Jill, who's a great actress that I've worked with before, she's like, what if you did it with a spinning camera? And as soon as that idea came in, it was like, oh, psh, psh. And then James, who plays the character of young Ruben, he added on to that with a thing. And then, so it was a great sense of collaboration of how to solve this story problem, which is a lot of making independent movies is like,
Yeah.
put your brains together and be like, okay, we have a problem we have to solve. How do we solve it? And let's put our egos aside and how do we make this
I
work?
think it's a great thing about just creative processes for all types, not just movies, but books, movie art forms of all types. So you're the co-writer on this, and someone else you were saying kind of had the spur of the idea, but you kind of built on it.
Yeah.
What was the foundation that brought forth the idea, the kernel that started this all off?
Yeah, Neil's a big horror fan, and it's like an actress that I was working with a lot back then, Laurel Marlanta. I was like, I need a writing partner because I felt like all my scripts had the same problems, and so she introduced me to Neil, and he loves horror movies, and we actually love different kind of horror movies, which is sort of interesting. We have some overlap in what we love, but how we view them is even a different thing. Like, uh, so yeah, so he just, I mean, I think Death from Dusk Till Dawn is definitely an inspiration because the original script was a 50-50. Like it was a romance story for 45 pages and a horror story for 45 pages. And over the course of rewriting it, it became the structure that it is now, which is less 50-50 and more like, one third, two thirds. Um, but yeah, his idea was just like combining romance and horror, and I think could it be done is a thing. And when I read the first draft, and I still have the first printed draft that I read upstairs, and on the front page I put romance is scary. And if you notice behind me, if I can get my directions
Yeah.
correctly, this is like love is scary. And then for a while it was falling in love is scary. And then, people were like, it needs to be punchier and love is scary. So it was just sort of the idea that love, I mean, falling in love is scary. It's like, you're going into new territory, like things get exciting but scary. It's like, am I going to lose myself in this situation? Is it going to be a positive thing? Is it going to be a negative? We don't know where it's going to go. You don't know what the outcome is going to be. So there's suspense and falling in love and whatnot. So it's that idea of putting those two things together. And it's like, I mean, I always thought it was cool and worked. Whether the audience does or not is up to each individual audience member. Do they pick up on the love? Do they pick up on the horror? I mean, it's definitely plenty of a horror movie for anybody who's seen it. So, horror fans rejoice. Like, you'll get what you hopefully enjoy, and then the romance fans will get something a little extra too. And hopefully everybody gets a little something extra.
Yeah, and we were talking a little bit beforehand, and I was thinking about this when I saw the film originally was, the main theme, first people kind of go the power of love because that's
Uh-huh.
kind of a general thing, but it's like for me personally, that like I was telling you, didn't quite fit. It's the strength of love and that what do you do with that strength that it gives you? And this,
Yeah.
I think, is a great movie for showing just the differences of how people take that internal strength and go different directions.
Yeah, because I mean, love can be used to justify beautiful and terrible things. I mean, like, obviously the most beautiful things in the world come from it, but also people can justify because if my love for an individual, or I won't use me because it's going to be a negative thing, like if somebody has like a love for an individual or a group or something like that that excludes another group or excludes another individual or is you know dangerous to another individual because they're fighting for their people versus those people, then you start to get into a situation where people are utilizing love in a way that, I'll say wasn't intended. I don't know who intended love to be a thing, but it's not what love is about to me. Like to me, it's like love is should be the great uniter. Like, love and empathy should be the great uniter, and it's like it gets used and corrupted in twisted ways.
And
Um,
yeah, and it's a great expression of it in here. So, talking about your film, it sounds like you're kind of new into the festival circuit right now,
yeah,
just
with this,
starting
I
out.
mean, I think we've shown it 7 festivals so far. So,
Okay,
ribbon.
so kind of looking forward, where are some places that people might be able to catch your film at festival and see it on the big?
Uh, well, there's when is this going to come out? And is it
Probably in about an hour.
Oh shoot. Well, I can't say one of them because they haven't officially announced it yet. There'll
Okay.
be a screening in New York at the beginning of December, the first weekend of December, December 7th at 11:30 p.m., 2024. Uh, at
Someplace in New York.
someplace in New York, at Union Square. Um, the Regal Union Square. I'll leave it at that. It's really exciting to be in that festival. And then we are going to be playing at. Actually, I don't think they've announced yet either. We're going to be playing in Atlanta in
So
late.
maybe what we should say is you do have a number of festivals online that they can, so they should keep a lookout for their local festivals to see where
Yeah,
it's playing.
yeah, and we have a lot that we're waiting to hear back from. Loveisscary.com is the website that has we'll have the updates and it has a trailer and stuff like that. And then
Okay.
there's also, of course, the socials, and you can at Straight On Till Morning Movie on the old Instagram, and then or at Craig Film on Instagram or Facebook. Hey,
There we go. So that's where they can kind of keep an eye on it. So it's only shown a few times, but have you gotten any nibbles yet on distribution?
Yeah, we definitely are having conversations with people. There have been some folks who have gotten to see it in the theaters, like at the premiere or at Film Quest, and the response was extremely positive from them, which warmed my heart after all these years. That some of the compliments that they've been giving are, they're just great. I don't want to say them because it's going to be like, hey, look at me, blah blah blah, But it's felt really good to hear what they're saying, and they're connecting. It's one of those things that, like, I'm sure, just like any movie, no movie is for everyone. Even Titanic, that's one of the biggest movies of all times, and absolutely beloved by so many people. There are people who are like, that movie's trash, that movie's garbage, it's crap. So it's like no movie is going to appeal to everybody, but it's like I think the people who are getting and going on the love story and on the journey and on the suspense ride that Straight On Till Morning is, are really connecting, and it's digging in under their skin, hopefully in a really cool way. So that's exciting when, a distributor or somebody like that says it, because obviously it means something when it comes from anybody. Like anybody who walks up and says, "Oh my God, your movie meant something to me. It touched me." That's amazing. And then if somebody who's like, "Oh wait, I can get this movie out to, I can get out to the world." Like that's even more exciting, that they might be willing to fight for it and get it out there. So that's
Yeah. I would be really surprised if this didn't get distribution. Honestly, from what I'm seeing of it. And you did remind me of one thing I always tell people, every art form has its own audience,
yep.
every piece of art. And that's a great thing, like you're saying there is, yeah, this is something, if you're into some of these elements that we've talked about, this is a great movie for seeing those play out and the story unfold.
Yeah, I'm hoping that, like, because it's a queer story, and it's a queer story, but hopefully it appeals to both queer and straight audiences. Like it's like I worked really hard with Bonnie right here, who plays Caitlin, who's also one of the producers. Like she was a great advisor to make sure that as well as other people in the cast and crew, that I didn't, that I did my best job of being, truthful to a queer experience and stuff like that. I'm not going to pretend like I know what, being a lesbian means by any means, but I have friends that I care about dearly, including Bonnie, and family members and whatnot in the community that I'm, happy to fight for and happy to be a part of, adjacently. And I just like I'm hoping that there's some sort of, to use the term from another interview, a bridge between the audiences in some way. It's like if somebody's watching this movie who doesn't realize that they're going into a queer story, and then they find themselves rooting for Danny and Caitlin and their predicament in fighting against what's happening to them. I would love that if there was, and if just one person comes up to me who was like, what, your movie changed my perception a little bit. Your movie made me, feel something different that I wasn't expecting in a positive way toward the queer community. Like that would be a win for me. And I'm hoping that even more than one person, but it's like, especially with what's going on and where things might go in the next 4 years, it's like, we just can't have that. It's like love is the fundamental right of, if there is a right, it's like, life, liberty, love. Like these are the fundamental things that the world is built on. And it's like to deny that from people for
Yeah,
reason,
gotcha.
I don't get it. So it's like, that's the side that and this is not a preachy movie. Like this isn't gonna you're not gonna be like, oh geez, like that's not the kind of movie it is. But the themes are there, and where it ends up, of course, hopefully is exciting and a surprise and interesting as well.
Well, you jumped ahead of me on one of my questions. That's usually what I ask people, what do you want the audience to take away from your film? And you've just told us, a big point of that. But I think we should also point out and give credit to Bonnie Jean Tyre for also, she was nominated for
Mhm.
Best Supporting Actress at the festival.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I think it's sort of funny that it's supporting actress because she's literally the person who's on screen the most in the movie. So I'm not sure how things get determined, but Samuel L.
Well,
Jackson got Best
I
Supporting
think it's
Actor for
because
both
it's
movies.
not directly her story.
Yeah, because Kelsey Christian, who plays
It's more through
Danny,
her point of view.
Yeah, it's the first person we meet, and then so this is like, and when Harry met Sally, this is Harry and this is Sally. It's like in terms of like who do you start with, right?
Yep.
But in any romance, it's a two-hander to use the industry term. Um, like, because well, I mean, what is it? Like a romance is, unless it's somebody who's in love with themselves and that's your story. But like in a romance like this, it's like it's two people, or more if that's your thing. And but so to me, it's like this has always been a dual lead movie. It's always,
Okay.
they are of equal importance. And in the editing and the writing and the editing, there was like how do we make sure to balance these things so it doesn't just become one person's movie the whole time? Because from a horror movie point of view, it's like I have two final girls, so like who's going to live, who's going to die? Will they both live? Will they both die? Like we don't know the answer. Like hopefully that adds suspense to the whole thing from that horror movie trope. But then from a love story trope, you have two characters that, hopefully make them make their world better together.
Yep.
But that's not always the easiest thing to do. So
And with the way the theme plays with the horror, it could very easily turn from a love to a tragedy, and it plays up very well on that all the way through.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, so for you, we talked about your movie, but what does Craig have coming up after Straight On Till Morning? What what are you working on?
Going to sleep. No. uh, yeah, we're working on getting this one out. I have two scripts that are, we'll say ready to go, but of course everything is, budget dependent, time dependent, whatever. But two scripts that I'm, happy with and looking forward to making. One's a story about soldiers and PTSD, but done as a horror movie, and because they're both horror movies. And then another one's like we'll call it a twist on an H.P. Lovecraftian type thing. I mean, I'm being vague on purpose because that's what we got to do. Um, but yeah, and then I kind of want to make a short film too. Yes, there we are, Cthulhu, the great god Cthulhu. You have a Cthulhu one of those?
Oh yeah. I
That's good.
I just kind of sidetracked there. I am an H.P. Lovecraft fan.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Um, and to give you a kind of insight, a couple of years ago at the local pop culture convention, FanX, I was able to get a couple of local authors that have done very well in horror. I moderate, and I got Jonathan Martin of FilmQuest, and we did a panel, H.P. Lovecraft's Impact on Modern Horror.
Right? Well, there's something about like that world that's I mean, my story lives in that kind of horror, but it's
Mhm.
not an H.P. Lovecraft, dark god or old
It's
god or anything like
cosmic,
that.
more the
Yeah,
cosmic horror aspect.
there's that element of that because there's something that's, absolutely terrifying about this, and I think it has to do with how small we can be in the universe, and also just how just the whole thing and it's cosmic, it's so big, it's how does a human fit into this world, which is what the big questions of movies are, right? It's like the big questions of art and life in a lot of ways is like, well, how do we fit into this world, and what is the world that we want to fit into? It's like is it our queer heroines here who are entering into a world that does not want them, or is it, are they shaping the world into what they want? Is it that, or is, in other stories, I mean, there's a million, cool stories about that kind of stuff. So I think that's one of the big questions of life, right? Why are we here? How do we fit in? What is our purpose? Like, I mean, because, and it can get pretty nihilistic if you look at it from some of the H.P. Lovecraft stuff. And I'm an optimist and, think that ultimately, the good ultimately love is going to prevail hopefully in the world, and so I don't know. Anyway, I don't know. H.P. Lovecraft, let's talk H.P. Lovecraft.
So
The
we'll
Dream
kind of
Quest
let's
of
kind of
Unknown to Death. It's one paragraph for 180 pages. Like, what is he thinking? It's impossible to read. So anyway,
so here's kind of going off that. It seems like you have a general theme that you like to play with horror tropes.
yeah.
Um, why horror? What's the draw of horror for you?
I love, like, for me, horror, and this actually applies to science fiction as well, is the fact that these are playgrounds where anything can happen and you can grapple with big questions and big themes directly. Like like if you made certain, it's like directly and indirectly. Like you can hit it, like go straight for it and make it uncomfortable. You can make it scary. You can make it suspenseful, but you can also do it metaphorically. And so it's like you can do both things at the same time. Whereas like in a we use the term straight drama, but not meaning straight that way, but like in a plain drama or something like that, if you're hitting it that direct, you have to like dance around it. Because in the real world, we don't often like go, straight for it because people are like, well, we don't want to offend, we don't want to say this, we don't want to like, blah blah blah. It's like, oh, what if this person doesn't like me or something like that? Whereas in a horror movie, you can just go for it. And so I like that we can address things that way, and it can be funny, it can be scary, it can be suspenseful. I mean, there's a million different kinds of horror, and also, I mean, life and death is, I mean, that's the great struggle, right? It's like what makes a life worth living? Death is scary. I mean, for some people, they're like, yeah, cool, whatever. Like when I die, I'm gone. And then it's like, and some people are like, oh yeah, no, I know exactly where I go after I die. And it's like, I don't pretend like I know the answers. Like all of these sound like plausible things. So it's like, I think there's something interesting about that. And frankly, I love suspense, like suspense and tension and being on the edge of your seat. And that's my favorite thing to feel in a movie. I love all the other stuff too, but if you don't have any of the suspense, for me, the movie's not necessarily going to be as elevated in my experience. And horror isn't the only genre by any means that is the driving machine to me. Because like thrillers can be that. I mean, Die Hard is amazing because Die Hard is a thriller. Like it's a thriller with a bunch of action in it. It's not actually an action movie, which is at least not how it's written and not how it's structured. But that suspense that I remember feeling in that, or Aliens, or Predator, or Terminator, or those things growing up, and even Jurassic Park. I mean, Jurassic Park works because the tension is so high because the dinosaurs are scary, and obviously, and Titanic. I mean, that's the most like the worst situation like you could possibly imagine. It's like you are in a completely hopeless thing in the middle of that ocean, and I mean that's terrifying. So I think all of the like horror elements creep into other movies, which I really like as well.
When working with writers, we talk about that every great story you'll find has an element of horror and an element of romance.
Yep, that's true. And if it's done well, hey, maybe it's not
And
so well.
it's even like, one of the biggest horror movies they say is still classified as one of the top horror movies. It's Aliens.
It's one of the great movies of all time.
And
And
it's
maybe in my opinion, it might be the greatest movie of
and
all time.
when we talk about it, I tell people, and you think about it, people go, well, there's no romance in Alien. Maybe a little bit. It's like, what about her and her cat?
Yeah, well, it's like you have her and her cat, but you also have like what's love, right? It's like
Yeah.
if you look at it from Alien's point of view, she has. If we're talking about the sequel, it's like I mean, it's a mother loving her daughter. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not her actual daughter, of course. Newt is not her actual daughter, but it's also the queen loving her kids. It's like you have two mothers that are fighting each other for their children, and
So it
that's
can play
powerful.
out in so many different ways. So we got the reason why you like horror. So what was your inspiration to become a filmmaker?
Um, I mean, I've always written stories. So like, I mean, my first story was The Adventures of Legoland in first or second grade. It is brilliant. I can assure you. No, but that was my first story. Like I always loved stories. I wrote a 4,025 page handwritten trilogy of novels between eighth grade and 11th grade. So like literally 3 or 4 hours a week, I would sit at my desk and I would turn on oftentimes it was the Metallica Black Album, although it started before Metallica Black Album came out. I would just put on music and I would write and it would literally be for an hour and I'd be like, okay, I'm done. And I would like get up and walk away. And I did that for over 3 years. Um, so stories have always been a part of it. And growing up, we always went to the movies. Like I feel like 2 or 3 Saturdays a month, we would go out and have dinner and go to the movies. And so like, I got to see all these movies in the theaters, Indiana Jones and E.T. and Ghostbusters and Clue and Back to the Future a gazillion times and Top Gun a gazillion times. And like it was so much fun and everything. And then in high school, I took a radio TV class and we were editing, to date myself, on VHS, reel to reel VHS. And it's almost like this magic moment when we cut two pieces together that didn't didn't fit together to begin with, like two pieces of, footage, film, they weren't film, but video together. And I'm just like, a new world just existed. Like this world did not exist until those two pieces were cut together, and now a new story is being told and a new world exists. And I literally thought, oh my God, this is amazing. People get paid to do this. And then I decided to be a director and make independent movies instead of just an editor, or I would probably be doing fine right now. But I think that was kind of the thing where I'm like, oh, this is a job. Like this is something that people can do. So then I went to the University of Iowa, which is naturally where one goes when they want to make movies. I love Iowa, and it turns out there are some famous people that went to Iowa that I didn't realize until somewhat recently. I mean, directors of, In-Game and Infinity War. Oh, no big deal. And then Brian Woods and his partner who did The Quiet Place. So Iowa can breed things. And my friend Daniel Krauss, who's a best-selling author, and The Shape of Water exists because it was his story when he was a kid. So, there are creativity that comes from Iowa, and actually Iowa is amazing. But yeah, went on a tangent, but that's where the idea came from, is to be a filmmaker. And I'm like, wow, this is the most, because to me, movies and great television and visual storytelling have the ability to affect an audience in a way that I would argue no other form of media or storytelling can do. Because it's like you can sit in an audience, and I'm going to use Deadpool and Wolverine as an example. Not that it's the bee's knees of movies, but it sure is funny and it sure is fun. And I saw that opening weekend with a packed IMAX house, and we were all on this journey of just having a blast. And I mean, I almost fell out of my chair 2 times laughing in that movie. And it was so much fun to be in that collective experience going on, but yet we're all having our own personal journey. And I think that's something that's amazing about movies, and it's so visceral, and it's so, the sound and the pictures and everything like that. And one friend was like, oh yeah, he said, he goes, it's because you don't have to be an active participant, whereas like in a book or a painting or something, you have to have a more active participation to have the emotional connection. And I'm like, that's somewhat valid, but I don't go into a movie and turn my brain off. Like I go into a movie, I turn off my phone, I don't talk to people. Like I want to go on the journey that could be promised, the promise of what that journey is. And because it can change myself as a human and what I think and what I care about in life, it may affect those things. It may just make me laugh, which is of value and great value and positive stuff. But it also can affect who I am as a human and affect the masses and what they do. That's like, I still argue one of the most important movies of all time is An Inconvenient Truth, because The Inconvenient Truth is the thing that made people realize that, global climate change is something that actually we are affecting, and made it into the popular consciousness. And I would argue that may be one of the most important movies in the world, or The Day After, which came out in TV movie in 1981 or something like that. About nuclear war, and it's absolutely devastating if you ever see it. The effects are very dated, but like ignore that and like go on the emotional journey. And Ronald Reagan said that was the movie that made him realize that nobody could win a nuclear war. It very well may have saved the world. And it's like, maybe it didn't, nobody would have pressed that button. But if you think you can win that war, you're much more likely to hit that button and blow the other people up. And it's like, that's a war that is unwinnable. That is the war, So anyway, that's one of those things where it's like, the epic power of movies down to the personal power and how it like affects us and maybe makes us think or even cry or feel something. Like, so, and that's, I think, valuable. Anyway, give me
No,
going.
so that's what you're telling us is, the reason why you got into it is the power that you see that's coming from movies that hit you personally and as what you can express to others.
Yeah.
So outside of movies, because it sounds like you go to movies a lot for enjoyment and kind of relaxation there. But outside of movies, what do you do to kind of break away and just kick back and relax away from the workload?
I love nature. I love hiking. Love mountains. Mountains. I mean, I love all nature. Mountains, beach. They get me outside. The mountains are my happy place. If I could live in Colorado and make movies, I would live in Colorado and make movies. But there's not.
Well,
That's
if
where I
you
grew.
talk to Jonathan, he'll say Utah has a lot of that.
Yeah, Utah's got some other things that, I mean, Utah's gorgeous. My God, it's like Provo might be one of the prettiest cities in the world. It's like mountains, more than 180-degree view of mountains. Yeah, I love going out to nature. I love hiking. I love, um, I've been getting into fusion dancing lately and doing a lot of fusion dancing, which is basically partner improv dancing, which is amazing. You don't have to have any skill and you bring your own background of dancing and you merge with other people and create really cool dance, or it's a disaster, but it doesn't matter. It's fun anyway you look at it. Um, and definitely enjoy travel. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to travel for the film festivals and go to Utah and Mexico City and in England and Scotland. But like I usually try and do a backpacking trip every year for 2, 3, 4, sometimes 6 weeks. Like I'll just like check out, and it's a little harder now because the movie stuff is busier, which is good. So it's like balancing those things are is important
Now, I know music also plays a part because you've been our karaoke person at Film Quest for a number of years.
for sure.
And in your film, also music plays a part. And so I was trying to get to that. Just so people know there's a lot of storytelling you do that's beyond just the visual. It's the use of the sounds that you do, but also the music that gets played into it. Um, was that a process that you struggled with in that? Because I mean, it does. I look at it and I caught it, and I talking to some other people, they didn't catch it, but there is a very strong influence of the music you use in the movie.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
I'm trying to get, was that an intentional from the beginning, or is it something that developed over time to come up with that impact of the song?
well, it's always been like in Neil's first draft, the character of David Albert, as opposed to Danny Dupree. Originally, it was not a queer story. It turned into a queer story about 3 years in, probably. Um, but uh, he was a musician. But the song that was in it was Skeeter Davis's "End of the World" was
Okay.
the song he had written. And of course, as soon as I read it, I was like, well, we're not we're not going to get that probably. Although maybe we could have, But we were like, well, let's come up with our own song. And then we were trying to find friends who were singer-songwriters and stuff like that to come up with songs. And Neil's like, "What am I doing?" He goes, "I'm a singer-songwriter," because he used to perform and live in Key West and perform as Tino Popstar. And so he wrote the song "Road to Your Smile," and it's one of those things where it's like it was written very quickly, and as soon as he gave it to him, I'm like, "Yep, that's it. Like that's exactly what the that's it." Um, so for a while, it was going to be just like that song, and then you start to realize it's like, oh yeah, if we hear this song too many times, it's going to be too much. Like it's going to get boring. It's not going to have any impact. And of course, this is a song no one's ever heard before. It's not like you're throwing "Don't Stop Believing" into a movie and you're like, oh, as soon as the piano starts, you're like, oh, of course it's "Don't Stop Believing." We have our connection to that. We have to create the connection to a song that people don't have. Um, and then, so then the idea I had was I'm like, well, let's make the first part of the movie like a needle drop movie with lots of different songs, and all of those songs are Danny Dupree songs. So we're basically hearing like her internal character stuff in the music of the movie. Um, it's because we never actually it didn't work out to have a single. Where sirens? I don't know if you can hear them.
I can.
Uh, we we didn't L.A. We didn't. It's hard to find someone and say, "Hey, can you write me an album worth of music?" And by the way, we have no budget. You know what I mean? That doesn't really work so well. So what ended up happening is my friend Brandon Mickelon, who went on a backpacking trip to Europe that really changed his perceptions of life and stuff. He wrote a song called "Rootless Tree," um, and just to write it. And this was, I don't know, 10 years ago maybe. And he sent it to me and he goes, "Hey, just as a thing, it had nothing to do with this movie." He was just like, I made this song to capture what it feels like to be on a backpacking trip. And I said, "Yes, that is exactly what it is." Like you captured exactly what it's like. Life could be a great journey or not at all. Like it's like go and face your fears and do it. And I was like, it's exactly the thing. And then I realized, oh my God, that fits this movie perfectly. So that became like Danny's song at the beginning, and then it's kind of like a folk rock song. And so we had Kelsey re-record the vocals, but kept the actual music because the only version that exists, like he sent me a version, and thank God he sent me a version without lyrics too, because it has been lost to time.
Oh.
Like those MP3s are in whatever MP3s he had, like the session is gone. So thank God I have it because it's such a great song. And then so we did that, and then Kelsey and her boyfriend, who's also a musician, somewhat after right after we shot the movie, we're like, oh, we think maybe what if it was a rock version? So they made like a rock version of the song Rootless Tree. And I really liked that too. And so then I was torn, and then I realized, wait, I can use both of them. Like we can utilize like different pieces and different arrangements of these songs and the Road to Your Smile song. There's a piano version and a full band version. And then there's other music in the movie too, like the opening credits song and stuff like that that are Danny's songs. And so in the end, it's like my original plan to have like 7 or 8 songs. It's like there's 5 songs, and one of them's not a Danny song that's in the opening. But we have different variations of those songs and different versions of those songs. So hopefully it stays interesting and fresh. But it's also interesting, and I think because it progresses the story, you have Danny's version of Rootless Tree, and then you have Danny and Caitlin's like together when they're doing stuff together, and you're like, oh, it's changing.
And
in
shouldn't
this
be saying things like that.
no, Danny. Well, that's in the beginning of the movie. So it's like that's no spoilers. So yeah, so it was a fun challenge. I mean, it was a lot of work. And thank God, I like when I cast Kelsey, I wanted somebody who could actually sing and act because she sings on screen. And there's times where the dialogue of the song "Road to Your Smile" is incorporated into, or so the lyrics of the song are incorporated into the dialogue of the movie.
Mhm.
So they're sort of singing on screen bits and pieces to each other. And so it's like I had to have people who could actually sing. It couldn't be like dubbed over. I don't think. I mean, it would have been. I don't know how we would have even done it. So.
Yeah. I just like I was saying, it's a great way because it helped the story progress if subconsciously even for probably a lot of people of how the songs progressed, it progressed the story along with it.
Yeah, well, that's the hope. That's the hope that they sort of feel a journey going on with the music as well as the actual visuals and stuff.
Yeah. So kind of moving forward for you, what would be Craig's dream project to be able to work on?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I have a lot of, like I said, I have a lot of ideas of my own that I love or people I know where it's like, oh, okay, like ooh, what can we develop that into or turn that into? Um, I mean, my script Miss Mary Madness, which is the H.P. Lovecraftian one, like I mean, this will happen someday because it's like I feel like it's a really cool idea and hopefully people will dig it. As far as like pop culture type things, I really want to make my version of what Alien 3 should have been, which is not anything revolutionary in the sense that it is Ripley, it is Hicks, it is Newt, type of thing. And it's like the aliens were supposed to come to Earth. Like that was literally the promise of that Alien 3 preview with the egg hovering over Earth a year before the movie came out. And I love David Fincher, and he doesn't like that movie anyway. But I think as far as like pop culture world, I think that would be great because I thought Alien Romulus was good, but it's like any of the other Alien movies, like they're not getting what this is and could be. Because so I think that'd be fun. I mean, I love science. I mean, I don't. I'll just leave it at that as far as like a pop culture thing. But Marvel, if Marvel wants to call or Star Wars wants to call, I'm in. Like let's go. Like I love those worlds and the universes that they've created, and it's like I would definitely enjoy playing in those sandboxes as well. Well, I love Steven Soderbergh's way of doing things where it's like make giant studio movie and have fun in that sandbox, and then make little indie movie that you could never get away with in big sandbox. And like I think jumping between those two worlds is something that I would enjoy doing because of the obvious challenges and positives and of each version of it.
Okay. So kind of moving up and kind of wrapping up kind of towards the end here, but let me ask you this. If someone came to you and said, "Hey, Craig, I want to become a filmmaker," what piece of advice would you give them?
Don't. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Um, uh, One, I would say if you want to become a filmmaker, and this is going to sound counterintuitive because I didn't do it, but it's like take some business classes. Um, like if you're in college or whatever, like take some classes about generally like general like starting a business, small business classes, because that's what you're doing. Like when you're making an independent movie, you're starting a business, you're creating a thing, you're hiring people and whatnot, and it's boring and it's not like I mean I can't. That's not the part of this thing that interests me at all. But I also am like, okay, well that's important. From a storytelling point of view, it's like practice, practice, practice. Don't like put your ego aside. You're not the next, Leonardo da Vinci. like like you're telling a story that is absolutely valid and absolutely important, and your point of view is something that we want to see and we want to hear. Like everybody from anywhere and everything. Like I want to hear everybody's story. Um, and it's weird because we're unique and we're special, and we're also not that. We're not special in the sense that like don't get your ego in the way. It's like tell the story the best you can, learn your craft, like iterate the movie over and over and over again. Like your script, send it out for feedback, take that feedback, send it out for feedback again. And don't just send it to one person because one person is just an opinion. But if you send it to 5 people, you send it to 10 people, and everybody tells you this part of your story doesn't work, it doesn't work. That's all there is to it. It doesn't work. So if that's an important part of your story, figure out how to make it work. Iterate it again, try it again. What are the important parts of that piece that you're trying to do? And do it again. And same thing goes to the editing stage of a movie. I mean, Straight On Till Morning was iterated 14 times. I had 14 different times that I had people in my living room watching it on the projector. I had individuals watching it. I had them fill out surveys like they do on the big movies, and then I had individual conversations with them. And I don't fight somebody on their opinion. This is their opinion. Like listen, ask questions that may clarify what they're going for, and then think about like what did I learn from that? And maybe it is that everybody is trying to tell you to make a movie that you don't want to do. Because I can't tell you how many people were like, man, I got to get to the bad guys on page 12 of my script. I'm like, that's literally not what this movie is. Straight On Till Morning is a romantic horror movie. So there are times where you say, okay, you know what, I'm going to fight for it, but I iterated it and talked to so many people. I could say, how do I get it to that place where it's achieving both goals, like, to the best of my ability. So that's the thing. It's like, I would say just, practice, 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 make a movie. And if it doesn't do well, cool, great. What did I learn from that? Like everything is a learning experience. Like, and I try and remind myself, like literally every single thing in life is a learning experience. Every relationship, every project, every rejection, everything. Like, what did I learn from that? How can I improve that? What do I like? And you don't have to agree with everybody. That's fine. It's like it's okay for us to disagree about what a good film is. Titanic is a good film to my friend who doesn't think it is. No, but it doesn't matter. Like he can think it's not a good film, and that's totally fine. But yeah, practice, 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 practice. And I have a couple other things. I'm looking over at my notes on the wall over here. Um, one thing is that it's like make films with passion without being precious. Because I think that's something that I fell into with this movie that eventually I had to move past was it's like I was being too precious with it rather than seeing the magic that could happen. And eventually I got out of my own way and got to the magic that was happening. But it's like, so I try and remind myself, it's like be passionate about life because to be like, oh man, I don't care about life. It's like that's not interesting to me. Like live life, be passionate, but don't be precious because it's like it's not that's precious. Being precious is a limiting agreement. It's not a expansive one. So these are things that I try and remind myself of, and hopefully it's helpful advice to somebody coming into the film business. And oh yeah, it's a lot of work. Like if you're not prepared for a lot of work, uh, brace yourself. Like get ready because it is an astronomical amount of work, especially into getting into the feature world. It's like over shorts. I was like, oh my God, it's so much work. But you can then hopefully affect people more and affect more people. And so, if you're working on something that you love, it's like enjoy the process and don't worry so much about the goal at the end. It's like enjoy the process. Man, I just hit you with a lot of advice right there. Hopefully it's useful.
I think it is. There's a lot of things that we hear a lot of times over, but it's always good to hear it from a different point of view. That's good stuff. So as we close up, any final call outs you'd like to do?
Oh, some.
I mean, it's like I tell people all the time, here's a chance to practice your Oscar speech.
I would like to thank. Uh, But honestly, like so many people worked so hard on this movie. I mean, here's two of them behind me. You know, we got Bonnie Jean Tyre and Kelsey Christian right here. We got Maria Olsen listed on there, and then, but it's like all the cast and crew and like just friends and family and people who supported all this time. Like I'm always grateful for them because it's like they did it for themselves. They did it for their own personal reasons, whatever it was, you know, as far as loving the story, loving the characters, loving the project, needing to work on a feature. What is the thing? Maybe they liked me and wanted to work with me or liked other people involved. Everybody does it for their own reasons. But I'm grateful to everybody who gave time out of their lives to this project because they can pick a million things to spend their time on, and the time is the most limited, precious thing that we have. And this meant enough to them that they spent time on it. And some people gave years to this, and other people gave a day. But any of it, it's like they gave of their life and what a very precious thing that we have that is life, and they gave that to Straight On Till Morning and to me, and that means so much. And I never take that for granted that that's the case because it's like just remember that. It's like every day I'm just like the fact that people gave this much of their effort and their passion and their time means a lot. So I appreciate that.
Well, thanks, Craig, for joining me and talking about your project Straight On Till
Yeah,
Morning.
thanks, Dan. This has been
Yeah.
fun.
So, and I want to tell everybody, if you like this, please share it out, give it a like. If you like what we're doing here, give it a subscription. It helps us do more of this, kind of keep advancing out. Again, Straight On Till Morning is on the film festival circuit right now. You can find it probably playing all over the place. I have a feeling it's going to be picked up by a lot of festivals. And like you said, you already got nibbles on distribution. So if not, you could probably be able to find it in more, hopefully on some of the big screens, but on the streaming services for sure. This movie is well worth that.
Oh,
So
thanks.
thank you again, and thank you for joining. We'll talk to everybody later.
Sounds great. Thanks, everybody.